One of the most important principles of design is dominance. And specifically, what I'm going to be talking about here and showing you is dominance of size. There are many different kinds of dominances that you need to know about and be able to apply to your paintings. But this is just one of them, and it is a very important one. Dominance of size. I'm going to enlarge this photo. And in this photo, there is no clear-cut dominance of size. You can't say for sure, well, this is definitely the dominant size in this photo. The sizes of the various shapes are too similar in size. I should, however, add that just because something is dominant in size within a painting, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the most important part of the painting. Dominance is achieved not only through size. So if I have a smaller shape within the painting, and I have a larger, more dominant shape in terms of size, that smaller shape could attract more attention and let the viewer know that that smaller shape is the center of interest and the more important part of the painting rather than the larger size. But even so, there needs to be a dominant size, even if that dominant size isn't the center of interest. Dominance is required for all of the elements of design. So size is one of the elements of design, and then there is shape and line and texture and color and value and space and form. So each of these elements of design needs dominance. In this video, however, I'm only concerned with dominance of size. In a good painting, there is no mistake as to what is dominant in size. In this photo, the size of the sky shape is too similar in size to these foreground hills and trees here. Even the size of this water shape here is a bit too similar in size to this distant mountain. So when you look at these different sizes of shapes, there's nothing that really stands out and says, yes, this is definitely the largest shape or area within the picture. Now I'm going to eliminate what I drew on top of that photo. I'm going to return the photo to its original size. Let's say you want to do a drawing of this scene here. First thing what you need to do is to decide on what is going to dominate in terms of size. So I think what I'm going to do is have these hills with all these trees here dominate in size. So therefore what I do is I first of all establish the overall shape of all of these trees. I don't start drawing individual trees like this, one after the other. But rather, the better way to start is to focus on the overall shape of what you're going to draw, and draw that in first. So all of this is the trees and the hills. And then down here, small size, just roughly indicate that building. And you can see immediately that it is this shape that is the largest within the picture area here. Even the sky shape is smaller than this shape, and of course this shape is the smallest. And now what I'm going to do is just add tone over this whole shape here like this. Dark tone. And that represents all of those trees. They form an overall dark value. So what you do is you paint in that particular overall value. You ignore all of the little bits and pieces of different values that may show up within the overall shape, like what you see here, for example. See here and here and here, little bits and pieces of lighter tone. You ignore that and you just add a darker value over the entire shape, thereby unifying everything. If you add little bits of lighter tone like this here and there, you're going to break up that large tonal mass. And if you do that, then you lose the unity that results from establishing an overall value like this. And now I'm going to add that distant mountain, something like that, and then I'll add a lighter tone to it so that it appears further back in space. Now what I'll also do is break up that large shape right here by adding another shape that is darker, and therefore it appears to be in the foreground more than this shape here. So now I have this progression of values from darker to lighter to even lighter. And that adds depth. But now there's no mistake whatsoever. What is dominant in size here? It's all of this dark mass that dominates in size. All of those trees and hills right here dominate in size over everything else, with the smallest shape being the building here. Then I might add a darker tone down here where the water is. And some of this vegetation here by the water maybe. I can change the arrangement of that photo and create my own arrangement and do whatever I want. I'm free to do that. I'm not bound by what I see in that photograph. And then I can add some tone to the sky area, darken that a bit. Darken this land area right there just a little bit. So I end up with the lightest value on the building. Add a few windows, some details. The largest single shape is this shape here. So that is dominant in size over all of the other shapes, all of the other single shapes. There is a variety of different sizes here. Strong contrast of sizes, as well as sizes that are a bit more similar, but no two sizes are the same in size. And therefore, that makes for the most interesting kind of composition in which there is this variety of different sizes of shapes and forms. The building is positioned according to what is called the rule of thirds. So if I divide the picture area up into thirds like this, you can see that the building here falls on this line here, this division line, and where that line intersects with the horizontal line right there. And that's called a sweet spot, and it's a good spot for where you can place the center of interest within the picture area. Now let's say you want something else to dominate in size, not the hills and trees. This time, what will dominate in size is the building itself. So I'll just roughly sketch in the building. And you can see that this building isn't following exactly what I see here in the photo. If you've studied composition, you'll know that you can rearrange the subject any way you want. to make a better composition. You're not going to find a good composition ready-made. You're going to have to make a lot of changes to get a good composition. And I can erase, I can do whatever I need to do to make the composition work. So I'm doing this really quick, and that's why this looks so rough. And I'll add a chimney here. And the ground area right there, and then right here is where the water is, and way back here are the hills with the trees. But you can see how small they are compared to this drawing, in which I made them really large. So in this sketch, they need to be made smaller so that the building can be made much bigger, and therefore the building now is dominant in size over the other elements within this sketch. And then I could add a few clouds, just a suggestion of clouds. And then I could add a tone. Now, the reference material that you work from needs to be considered only in terms of raw material that needs to be rearranged to make a better composition. Therefore, I can make that building a dark value instead of a light value like you see here. I can do whatever I need to do to make the building look interesting. So back here, I'm adding some tone, as you can see. Adding tone to those hills back there. And this building might have to be made a dark value. Dark roof. And the water down here. The hills back there are of a lighter value in order to push them back further. Then I could maybe darken all of this. The shadow being cast by the building. I can eliminate the water. I don't have to put the water in just because it's in the photograph. I'm not bound by anything in this photograph. I can make any kind of changes I want. The purpose is to come up with a good composition. Now, the building shape itself is a very uninteresting shape. You see, it's like this. It's not interesting, so you need to know how to make shapes interesting. And if you watch some of my videos on shapes, you'll learn how to make shapes interesting. Now, one of the ways that I can make this shape more interesting is to make more of an irregular shape and not have such a uniform looking shape. It's not irregular enough. So what I could maybe do is add something here to the top of the building like this, and maybe another one. It breaks up that regularity of the shape so that I have something like this. You see, it's more irregular, and then there's the chimney here. So I'll add the chimney like this. So I have these other shapes sticking up out of the main shape of the building. See, they're sticking up and pushing into the negative space, which is this, the sky area. Thereby, this positive shape, as it's referred to, is locking with the negative shape. They're locking together because of these parts of the building, these shapes that I just added, because they're pushing into that negative space. Then what I could do to make this shape even more interesting is to add another shape to this building, and what I could do is add these trees in the foreground here in front of the building, thereby also breaking up this large area of the shape here that doesn't appear very interesting. So I'm combining these different trees here into just one large overall shape. And they're leading over toward the building. And now the overall shape is even more interesting because those trees combine with the shape of the building. So it's something like this, which is more interesting than what the shape looked like before I put those other shapes in. This shape right here, where the riverbank is, makes a triangle shape that leads over toward the right and into the corner here and out of the picture. It doesn't lead the eye into the picture and toward the building. Therefore, I'm going to eliminate this riverbank and this river here. I don't need that. And I'll add this walkway here that's leading to the building. So the eye can enter here at the bottom and is being led back to the door. And to get more variety here, because all these shapes are the same, I need to add a larger shape like this, which breaks up that monotony of shapes that look the same. So I have one that looks different, and because it's different, the eye is attracted to that shape more than to these others, because those others look too much the same. And when you introduce a shape that's somewhat different from other shapes that look the same, the eye is going to go to that shape that looks different. And I think you can see that the picture now looks much more interesting than it did before I started making these changes and additions of different shapes. Now this area here still looks rather dull, not as interesting as it could be, and what I could do is add some windows that are larger in size. So I have some windows smaller in size, others larger in size. And that adds some variety. Now this is, after all, just a very rough sketch, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time making refinements and changes. And I think I'll add a darker tone to the top of the sky there, and it grades down to a lighter tone. And the eye follows a gradation from dark to light. See how that tone gets lighter as it moves away from the dark? The eye travels from dark to light, and therefore if I add a darker tone to the top of the sky and it gets lighter as it moves down toward the mountains in the background there, the eye of the viewer is kept within the picture area. The eye moves down like this and into the picture. Also, a gradation of tone can be established here at the bottom, darker in the foreground, and then it gets progressively lighter as it moves toward the building. Clean up this edge a little bit, and the top one. To make a shape more interesting, when that shape has a large, rather uninteresting area, like I pointed out to you here for the front of the building, you can then place other shapes in front of that shape, like I did with these trees here, thereby breaking up the larger, more monotonous looking shape with another shape. And that makes that shape more interesting then. And there's no doubt now as to what is dominant in terms of size within this drawing. It's, of course, the building. While in this sketch here, it's the trees and hills here. So make sure that you have a dominant size within your composition. Not only that, there needs to be a variety of different sizes. Never have two shapes that are of the same size. all of the shapes need to be of different sizes. And that's what's going to make your compositions as interesting as possible. I could make the building even more interesting by having an additional element sticking up out of the building, like an antenna, a TV antenna, for example. Something like this. Watch my videos on how interesting shapes are created, and you'll learn a lot more about what to do to make the shapes really interesting. Now, there's a lot more that I can show you, but it's time to end this video. This is more of an introduction to one of the most important principles of design, which is dominance. If you are interested in learning more, then check out my complete illustration art course. Thanks for watching, and now, goodbye.